The avoidance attachment style isn't just revealed through their actions, it's written in their language patterns, embedded in their tone, and betrayed by their instinctive reactions to emotional moments. While they've mastered the art of appearing engaged in conversations about feelings, their word choices, vocal inflections, and physical responses tell a completely different story about their comfort level with intimacy and vulnerability. Learning to recognize these verbal and nonverbal tells isn't about becoming a relationship detective or trying to catch them in deception. It's about understanding that avoidants have developed sophisticated communication strategies designed to maintain emotional distance while appearing to participate in intimate connection. Their language serves as both shield and smokescreen, protecting them from vulnerability while keeping others at arm's length. The way someone talks about emotions, responds to relationship conversations, discusses the future, and reacts under pressure reveals more about their attachment style than any direct question ever could. Avoidants have learned to say the right words without meaning them deeply, to engage in emotional conversations without actually being emotionally present, and to discuss feelings without truly feeling them. Understanding these patterns serves two crucial purposes. It helps you stop taking their emotional unavailability personally by recognizing it as a systematic approach to all intimate relationships, and it teaches you to value your own capacity for authentic emotional expression rather than trying to decode someone else's limitations. When you can read the language of avoidance clearly, you stop trying to translate love from someone whose emotional vocabulary is fundamentally foreign to genuine intimacy. The language of emotional distance, how they speak about feelings. The avoidance relationship with emotional vocabulary resembles that of someone speaking a second language they learned from textbooks rather than through lived experience. They know the words for feelings, understand the concepts intellectually, and can participate in conversations about emotions, but their language lacks the warmth, specificity, and personal investment that comes from someone who actually connects with their emotional experiences authentically. Listen to how they describe their own feelings. They use clinical, detached language that sounds more like psychological diagnosis than personal experience. Instead of saying, "I felt hurt when you cancelled our plans," they'll say, "I experienced some disappointment around the scheduling change." Instead of, "I love spending time with you," they'll offer, "I enjoy our interactions." This sanitized emotional vocabulary creates distance between themselves and their actual feelings while technically addressing the topic at hand. Their word choices consistently minimize the significance of emotional experiences, both their own and others. They describe profound feelings as interesting, intense experiences as nice, and meaningful connections as fine or good. This verbal minimization serves multiple purposes. It protects them from the vulnerability of admitting deep feelings, while also reducing the emotional weight of experiences that might otherwise feel overwhelming to their nervous system. The avoidant frequently intellectualizes emotions rather than feeling them, turning emotional conversations into academic discussions about relationship dynamics, attachment theory, or psychological concepts. When you express hurt about their behavior, they might respond with analysis about communication styles rather than acknowledgement of your pain. When discussing relationship challenges, they'll focus on problem-solving strategies rather than the emotional impact of the issues. Watch how they talk about past relationships and emotional experiences. They sound like researchers describing case studies rather than participants recounting personal history. Their language lacks the emotional charge, specific details, and personal investment that characterize someone who fully experienced and processed their romantic history. They might say, "That relationship didn't work out," instead of, "I was heartbroken when she left," or "We had different goals," instead of, "I was terrified of the commitment he wanted." Their emotional vocabulary often includes qualifying language that creates escape routes from full emotional ownership. They'll say, "I think I might be feeling," instead of "I feel," or "part of me seems to," instead of "I am." These linguistic hedges allow them to express emotions while maintaining psychological distance from full emotional responsibility or commitment to those feelings. The avoidance language around positive emotions is particularly telling because even joy, excitement, and love get filtered through their emotional distance mechanisms. They'll describe amazing experiences as pretty good or not bad, express affection through practical appreciation like "you're helpful" instead of "you mean everything to me," and discuss future possibilities in terms of logistics rather than emotional anticipation. They frequently use passive voice when discussing emotional situations, removing themselves as active participants in their own emotional experiences. Instead of "I chose to withdraw," they'll say "things got complicated." Instead of "I felt scared and ran away," they'll say "the situation became overwhelming." This linguistic pattern reflects their deeper psychological pattern of avoiding responsibility for their emotional choices and their impact on others. Their responses to direct questions about feelings often include deflection to external factors rather than internal experience. When asked, "How do you feel about our relationship?" they might respond with, "It seems to be going well," or "Other people think we're good together," rather than expressing their personal emotional experience. This deflection reveals their discomfort with accessing and expressing authentic feelings. The most revealing aspect of their emotional language is its consistency across different relationships and situations. Whether discussing family, friends, or romantic partners, they maintain the same emotional distance in their vocabulary. This isn't selective emotional unavailability. It's a systematic approach to managing feelings that treats all emotional experiences as potentially threatening situations, requiring careful linguistic management. Their language also reveals a fundamental misunderstanding about what emotional intimacy requires. They believe that knowing the right words and participating in emotional conversations constitutes emotional connection, missing the deeper truth that intimacy comes from authentic feeling and vulnerable expression, rather than technically correct emotional vocabulary. They can discuss feelings without actually feeling, analyze emotions without experiencing them, and participate in intimate conversations without being truly intimate. The Deflection Dictionary, their go-to phrases for avoiding intimacy. The avoidant has developed a sophisticated repertoire of phrases and responses that appear to engage with emotional topics while actually redirecting conversations away from genuine vulnerability and deeper connection. These deflection techniques are so subtle and well practiced that you might not realize you're being redirected until you notice that meaningful conversations consistently end up nowhere near where they started. Their most common deflection involves turning specific emotional concerns into general relationship theory. When you say, "I felt disconnected from you this week," they respond with, "Relationships naturally have ups and downs," or "All couples go through phases." This technique acknowledges your statement while completely avoiding personal responsibility or emotional engagement with your specific experience. Watch for their signature phrase variations of "I don't know," which serve as conversation stoppers disguised as honesty. "I don't know what you want me to say," "I don't know how to respond to that," or "I don't know what I'm feeling right now," all function to end emotional discussions without appearing uncooperative. These phrases put the burden back on you to either accept their claimed ignorance or push harder and risk seeming demanding. They excel at timeline deflection, pushing emotional conversations into some vague future when they'll supposedly be more capable of engaging. "Let me think about that." "I need time to process." "Can we talk about this later?" become their standard responses to any request for emotional presence or relationship clarity. The later, they promise, rarely arrives, and when it does, they often claim not to remember what you wanted to discuss. The avoidant frequently uses comparative deflection to minimize the significance of relationship issues by pointing to worse problems other couples face. "At least we don't fight like John and Sarah," or "Other couples have bigger problems than this." Redirect focus away from your legitimate concerns by suggesting you should be grateful for their minimal effort rather than expecting meaningful connection. Their deflection dictionary includes numerous phrases designed to make your emotional needs seem unreasonable or excessive. "You're overthinking this," "You're being too sensitive," "Not everything has to be a big deal," serve to pathologize your normal relationship needs while positioning them as the rational, stable partner dealing with your emotional excess. They're masters of topic deflection, responding to emotional conversations by bringing up practical matters, shared responsibilities, or completely unrelated subjects. When you try to discuss feeling disconnected, they suddenly remember bills that need to be paid, chores that need attention, or work stress they need to share. This isn't coincidental, it's strategic redirection away from emotional territory they find threatening. Watch for their use of hypothetical deflection, where they respond to current relationship concerns by discussing theoretical future scenarios or past situations instead of present reality. If we lived together, this wouldn't be an issue. Or, when I was with my ex, we handled things differently. Moves the conversation away from addressing current dynamics and your current needs. The avoidant often employs philosophical deflection, turning personal relationship discussions into abstract conversations about human nature, society, or relationship concepts in general. Your concern about their emotional availability becomes a discussion about whether anyone can truly know another person, whether relationships are naturally temporary, or whether emotional intimacy is realistic in modern society. Their deflection techniques include what therapists call word salad responses, long, seemingly thoughtful answers that use a lot of words while saying absolutely nothing meaningful about their feelings or intentions. They can talk for 5 minutes about relationship dynamics while completely avoiding any personal emotional disclosure or commitment to change. They frequently use deflection through compliments or reassurance that sounds caring, but actually serves to shut down deeper conversation. "You know I care about you, you're amazing," or "everything is fine between us" are deployed strategically when you're seeking more substantial emotional connection or clarity about relationship direction. The most sophisticated deflection technique involves turning your request for emotional intimacy into a discussion about your communication style or relationship approach. Instead of responding to your need for connection, they analyze your method of expressing that need, effectively making the conversation about your approach rather than their emotional availability. Their deflection dictionary also includes numerous phrases that create false intimacy while maintaining actual distance. "You know me so well." "I don't talk to anyone else like this." Or "you understand me better than most people," sound intimate, but actually avoid specific emotional disclosure or vulnerability while making you feel special for accepting their limitations. Tone and body language, what they're really communicating. The avoidant's tone and body language often contradict their words in ways that reveal their true emotional state and level of investment in intimate conversations. While they may say the right things verbally, their physical presence and vocal delivery tell a completely different story about their comfort with vulnerability and their genuine engagement in emotional connection. Learning to read these nonverbal cues helps you understand what they're actually communicating beneath their carefully chosen words. Their vocal tone during emotional conversations typically becomes noticeably flatter and more monotone than during casual discussions. When talking about feelings, relationships, or future plans, their voice loses the natural warmth and inflection that characterizes their speech during comfortable topics. This tonal shift signals their nervous system's response to perceived emotional threat, creating distance through vocal detachment even when their words suggest engagement. Watch how their speaking pace changes during intimate moments. The avoidant often speeds up their speech when discussing emotions. Rushing through vulnerable topics as if getting through them quickly will minimize their impact. Alternatively, they might slow down dramatically, speaking with deliberate, measured words that create psychological distance from the emotional content they're discussing. Both patterns serve the same function, creating barriers between themselves and authentic emotional expression. Their body language during relationship conversations reveals profound discomfort that their words might not express. They'll often create physical distance by leaning back, crossing their arms, or positioning themselves farther away during emotional discussions. Even when sitting close, they might turn their body slightly away, avoid direct eye contact, or engage in self-soothing behaviors like fidgeting or checking their phone that signal their desire to escape the conversation. The avoidance eye contact patterns are particularly revealing during emotional exchanges. They struggle to maintain steady eye contact when discussing feelings, often looking away, staring at objects in the room, or checking their devices. When they do make eye contact during vulnerable moments, it often feels forced or uncomfortable rather than natural and warm. This visual disconnection reflects their internal disconnection from the emotional content being discussed. Their facial expressions frequently remain neutral or slightly tense during conversations that would naturally generate more animated responses. While you might be expressing hurt, joy, or concern with corresponding facial expressions, they maintain a carefully controlled expression that reveals nothing about their internal emotional state. This emotional masking serves to protect them from vulnerability while making it difficult for you to gauge their authentic reactions. Pay attention to how their posture shifts when conversations move toward emotional territory. The relaxed, open posture they display during casual interactions often transforms into more guarded positioning. Stiffened shoulders, closed body positions, or rigid sitting that signals their nervous system's defensive response to emotional intimacy. These physical changes often occur before verbal deflection begins, serving as early warning signs of their discomfort. The avoidant's breathing patterns change noticeably during intimate conversations, often becoming more shallow or controlled. You might notice them taking deep breaths before responding to emotional questions, holding their breath during vulnerable moments, or breathing in a way that suggests they're managing anxiety or discomfort. These respiratory changes reflect the physiological stress their nervous system experiences during emotional intimacy. Their hand gestures and movement patterns also reveal their internal state during relationship discussions. They might engage in repetitive, self-soothing behaviors like touching their face, playing with their hair, or fidgeting with objects. These unconscious movements serve as outlets for the nervous energy created by emotional discomfort, while providing subtle ways to self-regulate during conversations they find threatening. The disconnect between their verbal and non-verbal communication becomes particularly obvious when they're expressing affection or commitment. They might say, "I love you," with a tone and body language that suggests obligation rather than genuine feeling, or discuss future plans while their posture and energy convey reluctance or discomfort. This incongruence between words and presence reveals their internal conflict about intimate expression. Their response time to emotional questions often includes noticeable delays that suggest internal processing or struggle to access authentic feelings. Unlike their quick responses to practical questions, emotional inquiries generate pauses, fillers, or requests for clarification that reveal the effort required for them to access and express feelings that don't come naturally. The avoidance energy level noticeably decreases during emotional conversations, as if discussing feelings literally drains their battery. The enthusiasm and animation they display during other topics disappears, replaced by a heavy, tired quality that suggests the emotional labor required to engage with intimacy feels exhausting rather than energizing. Their physical proximity preferences become obvious during vulnerable moments. Even in established relationships, they might create small amounts of distance during emotional conversations, sitting slightly farther apart, avoiding physical contact while talking, or positioning themselves where they can easily exit if the conversation becomes too intense. This spatial management reflects their need for escape routes during emotional intimacy. Reactive patterns, how they respond to emotional triggers. The avoidance response patterns to emotional triggers are remarkably predictable once you learn to recognize them, revealing a nervous system that treats intimate conversations and relationship discussions as threats requiring immediate defensive action. Their reactions follow consistent patterns that prioritize self-protection over connection, creating recognizable sequences of verbal and behavioral responses that help you understand when their attachment system has been activated. When faced with direct questions about their feelings or the relationship's future, the avoidant's immediate response often includes a visible physical reaction, a slight recoil, tension in their facial muscles, or a brief pause that signals their nervous system registering threat. This physical reaction usually precedes any verbal response and reveals their automatic defensive activation before their conscious mind crafts a strategic reply. Their verbal responses to emotional triggers typically follow a predictable escalation pattern. They begin with deflection attempts, changing the subject, making jokes, or redirecting to practical matters. If you persist with the emotional topic, they progress to minimization, downplaying the significance of the issue or your emotional response. If deflection and minimization fail, they often escalate to defensiveness or counterattack, making you the problem instead of addressing the original emotional concern. Watch how their language becomes increasingly clinical and detached when they feel emotionally cornered. As conversations move deeper into vulnerable territory, their word choices shift from personal to impersonal, from specific to vague, from emotional to analytical. This linguistic distancing serves as a verbal shield that protects them from feeling too much while maintaining the appearance of participating in the conversation. The avoidance response to expressions of need or requests for emotional support often includes immediate problem-solving mode activation. Instead of providing emotional comfort or empathy, they jump into fix-it mentality, offering practical solutions while completely missing the emotional component of what you're sharing. This response reveals their discomfort with pure emotional presence and their need to convert feelings into actionable tasks they can manage. Their reaction to relationship conflicts follows a distinct pattern of emotional shutdown that might look like calm rationality, but actually represents psychological withdrawal. They become increasingly quiet, measured, and controlled as emotional intensity rises, creating an eerie calm that contrasts sharply with the emotional energy in the room. This shutdown serves to protect them from overwhelming feelings while often escalating the other person's emotional distress. When triggered by discussions of commitment, future planning, or relationship escalation, the avoidant often responds with sudden fatigue, claims of being overwhelmed, or physical symptoms like headaches or feeling unwell. These psychosomatic responses aren't usually conscious manipulation. They're genuine stress reactions to topics their nervous system interprets as threatening to their autonomy and safety. Their response pattern to expressions of love or deep emotional connection includes visible discomfort that might manifest as nervous laughter, sudden topic changes, or physical restlessness. Even positive emotions trigger their defensive responses because intensity of any kind feels threatening to someone whose safety depends on emotional moderation and control. The avoidance reaction to conflict often includes what therapists call stonewalling, becoming completely unresponsive while remaining physically present. They might sit silently, offer minimal responses, or claim they have nothing to say when faced with emotional confrontation. This stonewalling serves multiple functions. It protects them from vulnerability, frustrates the other person into giving up, and maintains their sense of control over the interaction. Their triggered responses frequently include attempts to rush through or end emotional conversations as quickly as possible. They might agree to things they don't mean, make promises they won't keep, or say whatever seems necessary to conclude the discussion without actually engaging with its emotional content. This conflict avoidance prioritizes immediate escape over authentic resolution. When their usual deflection strategies fail and they're forced to engage with emotional content, the avoidant often responds with overwhelm that looks like genuine vulnerability, but actually serves to shut down further discussion. They might claim the conversation is too much, express feeling pressured, or become emotional in ways that make you feel guilty for pushing and end the discussion without resolution. Their response to your emotional distress often includes taking it personally and making themselves the victim of your feelings. Instead of providing comfort or addressing the issues causing your upset, they focus on how your emotions affect them, how your needs feel demanding, or how your expression of hurt makes them feel attacked. This response pattern consistently redirects emotional conversations away from your needs and toward their discomfort. The avoidance reaction to genuine emotional intimacy often includes immediate post-intimacy withdrawal. After moments of authentic connection or vulnerability, they typically pull back, become distant, or create conflict that reestablishes emotional distance. This pattern reveals how threatening genuine closeness feels to their nervous system and how they need to restore their sense of autonomy after periods of emotional connection. Their triggered responses also include what psychologists call emotional flooding, becoming so overwhelmed by feelings that they shut down completely or lash out defensively. Unlike secure individuals who can regulate through emotional intensity, the avoidant either numbs out or explodes when their emotional capacity is exceeded, creating dramatic reactions that often derail productive relationship conversations. Your communication matters more, building self-love through healthy expression. The most important realization that comes from recognizing avoidant communication patterns isn't what it reveals about them. It's what it teaches you about the value of your own authentic emotional expression And your right to be in relationships where that expression is welcomed, appreciated, and reciprocated. Understanding their linguistic limitations should redirect your focus towards celebrating your own capacity for genuine intimacy rather than trying to decode someone else's emotional unavailability. Your ability to express feelings directly, discuss emotions authentically, and engage in vulnerable conversations isn't something that needs to be toned down or adjusted to accommodate someone else's limitations. The fact that you can say "I love you" and mean it deeply, express hurt without intellectualizing it away, and discuss future dreams with genuine excitement represents emotional health that deserves to be matched, not diminished, to make someone else comfortable with their own emotional numbness. When you notice yourself starting to adopt their communication patterns, becoming more guarded with your language, minimizing your emotional expressions, or avoiding vulnerable topics to prevent their discomfort, it's time to consciously choose your own emotional authenticity over their need for distance. Your natural warmth, openness, and emotional availability are gifts that should be treasured by a partner, not managed as threats to their psychological safety. Use your awareness of avoidant language patterns as a tool for strengthening your own emotional vocabulary and communication skills. Notice how much richer, more specific, and more authentic your emotional expressions are compared to their clinical detachment. Celebrate your ability to feel deeply and express those feelings clearly, rather than viewing these qualities as excessive or overwhelming simply because someone else can't match your emotional capacity. The contrast between your communication style and theirs should illuminate what you bring to relationships and what you deserve to receive in return. You offer genuine emotional presence, authentic vulnerability, and clear expression of needs and feelings. You deserve a partner who can meet you in that space rather than someone who treats your emotional gifts as burdens to be managed or problems to be solved. Building self-love means refusing to shrink your emotional expression to fit someone else's comfort zone. Stop editing your natural enthusiasm to seem less intense. Stop minimizing your needs to appear less demanding. And stop intellectualizing your feelings to match their emotional distance. Your authentic communication style is what creates real intimacy and meaningful connection with people who are capable of reciprocating. The energy you've been spending trying to decode their mixed messages, interpret their deflections, and translate their emotional unavailability into something meaningful could be redirected toward people who communicate as openly and directly as you do. There are partners who will appreciate your emotional intelligence rather than feeling threatened by it, who will engage with your vulnerability rather than deflecting from it. Your communication matters more than their limitations. Your capacity for authentic expression matters more than their need for emotional distance. Your ability to create intimacy through vulnerable conversation matters more than their sophisticated deflection techniques. Choose relationships where your emotional gifts are celebrated rather than where they're treated as problems to be managed. The most loving thing you can do for yourself is to stop trying to translate love from someone who speaks a fundamentally different emotional language and start investing your communication energy in people who speak the same language of authentic connection, vulnerable expression, and genuine emotional presence that you offer so naturally. Your words, your feelings, and your authentic expression deserve to be received with the same openness and appreciation that you give to others.